At the beginning, Hermes was thinking, "Dear me," from my previous life. Two girls were seen running as Hermes continued thinking that he had been just an ordinary sailorman. One of the girls tripped over a rock while running, and Hermes thought that he had also been an anime nerd. Then a monster appeared in front of the girls, and Hermes thought that one day, when he woke from slumber, he had reincarnated into another world. Hermes appeared in front of the girls, who called out to him, "Hermes-sama." Hermes thought that it was the world of his beloved lovely Sorcerer, and that he had become a mob character in it. Hermes then used magic to attack the monster, defeating it. The girls praised him, saying, as expected of Hermes-sama. Hermes asked if they were all right and told them to leave their recovery to him. He used healing magic while thinking that he wondered where it all began. He thought that it was probably back then, around half a year ago, when he came across the romantic action RPG Lovely Sorcerer, or Love Sor, as it was commonly called. It had been a massively popular game that appeared like a shining star within the eroge industry, where sales had been declining year after year. True to its name as a romantic action RPG, it featured a combat system, a rare find in eroge. Then the scene shifted, showing someone using a computer mouse and saying that a stun lock could be done there. Hermes thought about how he had become so into the game that he ended up starting a strategy site for it. He updated the site and looked at the comments, noticing that the commenters were excited. He thought that no matter how godly a game was, one would eventually get bored and dissatisfied. While using his phone, he thought that the combat had become formulaic and muttered that if only the characters could move with more freedom. Looking at his phone again, he said that the only thing left to do was to get the trophies he hadn't earned yet, though they were plain and tedious tasks. Lying back in his chair, he said that he had about completed Lovely Sorcerer. Then, slapping his cheek, he told himself to pull it together, thinking he wasn't done yet and deciding to get the trophies. He thought that he wished he could keep playing Lovely Sorcerer for all time. He then lay on his bed, and the scene shifted to the sky. Someone murmured, wondering what time it was, and reached for something before realizing that what they were seeing was a canopy. Sitting up in confusion, Hermes noted that his room hadn't been this luxurious before. He got up, wondering where he was and if he might be overseas. He thought that he had gone to bed after gaming, and then wondered if he had been kidnapped. Looking toward the door, Hermes decided he would have to go outside to find out where he was. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and a maid entered, addressing him as Hermes-sama and asking why he was standing in front of the door. Hermes, confused, asked who Hermes was supposed to be. The maid looked tense and cried out, saying it couldn't be true. In tears, she said that until yesterday, Hermes had been calling out to her like normal. It was Fran. Hermes repeated her name questioningly, asking if that was what he should call her. Fran, visibly frightened, said that he was speaking formally to her and asked in panic if he really couldn't remember. She cried harder, saying that there was no way. Was this because of the accident last week? Hermes repeated the word accident, confused, and thought that she didn't seem like a kidnapper. Still, he couldn't think of a single reason why there would be a maid. Fran explained in shock that Hermes had been in a carriage accident, though nothing had seemed wrong until yesterday. Crying, she said that he had suddenly lost his memories, insisting that it was too cruel, even for a joke. She told him that he was the next in line of the family, Hermes von Lunacelia, the Duke's son. Hermes thought about those words, the Duke's son, and grabbed his head in confusion. Fran asked in panic if he was all right. Hermes said that his head was killing him and struggled to stand. He walked over to a mirror and stared at his reflection, thinking that his face was so flawless that even he, as a man, was captivated by it, with features so delicate that they would appear feminine to some. He brushed his hair back, pulled at his cheek to check, and then grabbed the mirror in shock, thinking that he had become super good-looking. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his head, and he thought about what was happening to him. Images flashed before his eyes, and he realized that these were memories from this good-looking Hermes guy. He thought that this was the Triceratops Kingdom and realized in shock that it was the same as in Lovely Sorcerer. He was certain, since someone who had followed the game as closely as he had wouldn't get it wrong. With growing excitement, he thought that meant he had been reincarnated in the world of Love Sor. He couldn't believe that he had been reincarnated into the world of his beloved game. Overwhelmed with joy, Hermes thought that it was like something straight out of a light novel plot. He wondered if this was what people called the grace of another world's god. Then, with a tense face, he thought that in that case, there was a chance he had died from overworking in his previous life. The unfortunate thing was that the boy this body belonged to Hermes von Lunacelia was someone he didn't recognize. Looking at the mirror again, He thought that it seemed he had reincarnated as a mob character. Hermes admitted to himself that he didn't recall doing anything deserving of reincarnation, but there was no point in worrying about what was done. He wouldn't find an answer even if he thought about it. There was no choice but to accept how things were. Fran called out to him timidly from behind the door, asking if his head was still hurting. Hermes thought in panic that she was totally looking at him like he was someone suspicious. He quickly apologized and told her that his memory had just lapsed for a moment but was back now. Fran looked confused and repeated his words, asking if it had really lapsed for a moment. Hermes thought that might have been stretching things, but Fran said that it couldn't be helped. Hermes was confused, wondering if she had really bought that explanation. Fran explained that it had been a week since the accident, and even if he had recovered, there could still be after effects. Hermes thought that was true and noticed that Fran was wiping her tears. He thought that if she was just going to accept it like that, then it was a plus for him. There was no point in arguing. He decided that it was good to have an easy excuse to use from now on. Hermes apologized for making Fran worry and told her it was fine now, that he had completely remembered being Hermes von Lunacelia. Fran, still uncertain, commented that he was acting differently than usual. Hermes avoided her gaze and wondered how Hermes normally acted, or rather, how he spoke. After thinking for a moment, he cleared his throat and declared that he was just the same as always. He told her that since his memory had returned, she could back off and leave him on his own for a bit. As Hermes spoke, he wondered if he was acting like a chunabu. Fran bowed politely, saying that she understood and was relieved to see him back to normal. Hermes thought that she had accepted it so easily. Fran then told him that the master was waiting for him in the dining room and asked him to come after changing his clothes. Hermes agreed, saying he understood and thanked her. When Fran left, Hermes sighed in relief and collapsed onto the bed, then suddenly hit it while shouting in embarrassment, realizing how cringeworthy that whole act had been. Blushing, he thought that he had ended up talking like a chuny. He was sure he had been reincarnated into the world of lovely Sorcerer, but as some character he didn't know called Hermes von Lunacelia. He thought it was too bad he wasn't the main character, but, looking at it another way, maybe it was good. He reasoned that if he had been reincarnated as the main character, he would probably be forced to follow the game's scenarios, even if getting close to the heroines sounded nice. It was different for a mob character. Mob characters didn't have any destiny or duty pushing them. He was free to just enjoy this world he loved. Hermes thought that it would be nice if he could check his status like in the game. Suddenly, a system window appeared before him. In shock, he said that no matter how he looked at it, it was a status screen. He recognized it from the game and wondered why a mob character had one. He considered that maybe everyone in this world could use it, or perhaps it was a reincarnation bonus, meaning he might be the only one able to display his status. He concluded that it was lucky for him either way. If he could see his status, he could plan what to do from here on out. As he studied the screen, he noticed something strange. It showed that he had an aptitude for all magic attributes. In the game's setting, each person only had one. He remembered that, because of his aptitude for all attributes, the main character, Atlas Kun, was able to take the stage in the Magic Academy story. Seeing that his proficiency level showed 10 instead of 0, Hermes realized that meant he could use magic. He excitedly thought that, in other words, he had the same specs as the main character. Trying to calm himself down, Hermes raised his hand and decided to test it. Standing up, he extended both arms and cast the wind attribute novice spell, Whirlwind. Immediately, wind surged around the room, sending books flying. Hermes laughed with joy, increased the wind speed for a moment, and then stopped the spell. In awe, he said that it was magic, this was real magic. Looking at his hands proudly, he shouted that he did it, that he could use magic. He thought that magic was a miracle that didn't exist in the world from his previous life, an unknown realm beyond science. He could feel it, something warm flowing inside his body. It had to be mana. Hermes thought that he had somehow ended up bound to this world, an endless paradise where he could start over and still enjoy the world of lovely Sorcerer. Clenching his fist, he thought that there had been so much he couldn't accomplish in his previous life, but this time, he might be able to fully enjoy everything without missing a single part. Overwhelmed with happiness, he shouted his thanks to the god of games, laughing as he thought that he was so happy that some cringy line had slipped out. He concluded that otherworld reincarnations were the best, and thus, his life in another world began. Just then, Fran opened the door, calling out urgently to Hermes. She stopped in shock when she saw him and the room a complete mess. While Hermes was shouting that magic was the best, seeing the state of things, Fran shouted that he was temporarily banned from using magic. Hermes, taken aback, cried out in disbelief, realizing that the maid, Fran, had given him a severe chastising. Then the scene shifted, and Hermes was thinking that this was the world of the romantic action RPG, Lovely Sorcerer. Fran told Hermes in frustration that he could not do such a thing, and that using magic indoors was dangerous. Hermes thought that the maid, Fran, was upset at Hermes, the mob character he had reincarnated as. Even though civilization there was behind Earth's, this world had the magic and spells he had longed for. Fran then shouted, asking if Hermes was listening to her. Hermes replied that he was, and he thought that Fran had been lecturing him like that for over 10 minutes. According to Hermes' memories, she seemed to be his personal maid. Her mother also worked as a maid devoted to the Lunicelia ducal household. Hermes thought that although the old Hermes had spoken like a total chunibu, he had possessed a pure and gentle personality. He had been a man of character, blessed with both loyal servants and friends. Hermes bowed to Fran and told her that he had something he wanted to check, and so he had ended up using magic without thinking. He added that it would not happen again and that he was truly sorry. He thought honestly that he just wanted to investigate magic. Fran reacted with surprise, saying she understood and that if he said that much, she would not nag him anymore, and she reminded him that none of them wished to see him get hurt. Hermes thanked Fran for worrying about him and smiled, thinking that he would give her a smile, showing his utmost gratitude. Fran reacted with a startled Paya and shock, and Hermes wondered what had happened, then remembered that he was handsome now, and that his charm stat was maxed out, thinking that even the protagonist had only started at around 10, so it was strange. Fran began searching for something, and then, while giving him his clothes, she said she would clean up his room. She pushed him out while telling him to hurry to the dining room because the master was awaiting his arrival. Hermes walked while thinking that after making such a mess, he wondered if it was really fine for him not to clean it up himself. He recalled that the dining room was near the first floor's entrance and thought that nobles had it good. Entering the dining room, Hermes said that he apologized for the wait, father and mother. He thought that he should play the role of their real, gentle son, Hermes. His father greeted him, noting that he was quite late and mentioning the loud noise, then asked if Hermes was all right. Hermes replied that there was no problem and that his memory had just been a bit hazy. His father commented that although it had been a week since the accident, it was worrying. Just as Hermes was about to sit, his father told him that he would be attending the Royal First Magic Academy in a month and advised him not to push himself too hard. Hermes thought that the school was the setting where Lovely Sorcerer took place, meaning he would be attending the academy too, at the same time as the heroines from the game. Sitting down, he thought that although he did not know how he ended up becoming Hermes, since he had reincarnated, he wanted to live this life. His mother told him that although she had wanted to stay with him until the entrance ceremony was over, she would have to leave soon. Hermes thought that his mother usually worked far away, but ever since the accident, she had been staying at the house. He told her that it would be hard for him too without having her around. His mother reacted tearfully, insisting that he needed her and that she must stay by his side, but his father interrupted, saying it would be a problem. His father explained that because of a task assigned to him by His Majesty, he had asked her to manage the territory, and besides, Lucina was over there. He asked whether she planned to leave Lucina on her own. Hermes' mother faltered at that. Hermes thought that according to the memories, Lucina was his sly little sister, Eris was a problem child, and Hermes was a chunibu, making it quite an intense family. Hermes then coughed, and his father apologized, saying Hermes did not get to spend much time with his mother. Hermes told him that he did not mind. While eating, he said that everything they did was for the house and that if he were to become the next duke, he should not indulge unnecessarily. His father laughed and said that Hermes was surprisingly sharp for his age and that it was troublesome. He commented that a well-behaved child was hard enough for a parent and said while sipping his tea that a child who acted unreasonably would be difficult and that parenting was a challenge. His father put the cup down and said he was heading to the courtyard to do practice swings. Hermes thought that it was their daily routine of morning training and said he would be there shortly. Hermes thought that, according to Hermes' memories, the Lunicelia ducal house had produced geniuses since their first generation. Naturally, father was one. His elder sister was skilled with swordsmanship, and his younger sister was skilled with magic. As for his talents, Hermes had them all a talent for swordsmanship and the ability to use all attributes of magic. That was why Hermes had been renowned as the greatest prodigy of the Lunicelia ducal house since its founding. Standing up, Hermes thought that no matter what Hermes had tried, he had been a monster who rose to be among the top practitioners. Hermes walked out while waving to his mother, and she waved back. Hermes thought that, because of the real Hermes' humble nature, his fame had not yet spread, but now it was different. Walking through the hallway, Hermes thought that he wanted to know how far these talents could go and what he would be able to accomplish in this world. Standing near a door, he thought that since he was not one of the main characters, it would be interesting to aim to become the strongest. Opening the door, he thought that having the best body and the greatest knowledge would be wasted on a mundane life. His father greeted him, saying he was earlier than expected. Hermes replied that he had eaten light for training and thought that he had actually forgotten to get changed. His father instructed him to begin with practice swings and to keep them up until told to stop as he handed him a sword. Hermes accepted, saying he understood. Hermes thought that the sword reminded him of the wooden sword he had bought in his last life when he had waved it around wildly and wrecked the house. As he swung the sword, he noticed that even though it was his first time, he did not feel his balance shifting, and the body remembered how to swing properly. His father said that was right and as expected of Hermes, who already had the basics down. Hermes thought that Hermes' past experiences were probably being fed back to him. He told his father that he still had a long way to go compared to him. His father replied that he believed Hermes should have more confidence in himself. Hermes thought that it was amazing. While swinging, he thought that unlike the fixed patterns in the game, he could move as he pleased. He wondered if the same applied to magic. He remembered that the spell he used that morning, Whirlwind, in the game only created wind that blew the target away. As the intelligence stat increased, the magic's power increased too, but it only increased the damage. He wondered whether, now that it was real, he could control the wind to support himself. His father asked whether Hermes was just about ready, and Hermes thought that it had not seemed like there was an immobilization period when he had used magic earlier, and he wanted to try it. Then the scene shifted, and Hermes and his father took a fighting stance. Hermes was thinking that there were so many things he could do and so many things he wanted to do that it seriously felt like he would lose focus. He told himself that he was fine and that his father could start any time. His father warned him to be careful and not let himself get hurt, but then suddenly attacked. Hermes barely defended and was thrown away. Hermes said that it hurt and thought that if he took it head-on, his hands would go numb. He tightened his grip on his sword, smiled, and thought that he should bring on the hard training. He attacked while thinking that he would copy some techniques before entering the school. Then the scene shifted, and Hermes was sitting on the ground, thinking that his body remembered how to handle a sword. His father walked away, saying he was off to work. Hermes thought that he could not land a single blow and that was the level between them. Fran approached Hermes and handed him a cloth, telling him to wipe off his sweat. Hermes took it, said thank you, and while wiping, asked Fran to get him a change of clothes and a spellbook, a novice one. Fran repeated his words in surprise, asking about the change of clothes and the spellbook. Hermes confirmed it, saying he was thinking of practicing some magic after swordsmanship. With a smile, he added that if he practiced in his room, it would get all messed up again, and asked Fran whether she wanted to clean it for him. Fran expressed frustration and ran off, saying she would prepare them right away. Hermes lay on the ground and said that it was a fine day and a perfect one to practice swordsmanship and magic. He looked up at the sky. Then Fran returned, and Hermes thanked her. She handed him the book, and Hermes told her she could return to work and that he would take his lunch there later. Fran said she had an ominous feeling and did not want to stray too far. Hermes told her she was such a worrywart, that he appreciated the sentiment, but that she should focus on her own work. Fran blushed, saying that girls would not do whatever he wanted just because he smiled at them, and added that his request was certainly quite forceful. She cleared her throat and agreed, walking away and telling him to call her if something happened. Hermes thought that a maxed out charm stat was no joke, or at least it seemed that way. He looked around and said that he had the courtyard all to himself, and that it was time to end the Hermes performance. He sat down and said that it was time to get started, that it was time for magic. He opened the book, said, "Let's see here," and laughed, saying that he could finally read the grimoires he had not been able to read when it was a game. He thought that it was interesting. Hermes read that magic was the act of consuming and controlling the mana that circulated within one's body to produce various phenomena in the world. He read that there were two branches of magic. One was incantation, in which a spell was forcibly activated by consuming mana through a chanted incantation. The other was mana manipulation, in which a spell was materialized by manipulating one's mana and visualization. Hermes wondered whether the spell he used earlier had been forced to activate by incantation. He reacted in surprise when he saw that although incantations were easier, their power could not be adjusted. He thought that, of course, it would have a drawback. He read that, with incantation, the mana consumption and damage were fixed based on the incantation, while with mana manipulation, by controlling the amount of mana consumed, the damage could be finely adjusted. There were no classifications such as novice and intermediate. Mana manipulation also seemed to allow the attack's range to expand and its effects to be enhanced. Hermes thought that he had to master mana manipulation no matter what. Hermes closed the book and said that he might as well try it out since he had been reading for a bit. He said he would start by circulating his mana within his body and imagined his mana like it was blood, gradually gathering it in his hand. His hand began to glow, and Hermes smiled, saying that Hermes' talent was seriously amazing and that it had worked perfectly, like a sponge absorbing water. Then the magic disappeared, and he tried again. Hermes closed his eyes and thought that control was key when using mana manipulation. His hand glowed again, and he opened his eyes, saying that it looked good. Water formed in his hand, and he said that imagining water had been a success. Then he said next he would increase the mana. The water floated upward. He said to decrease it, and the water flowed downward. He said it was like a water performance but controlled by adjusting the spell's power. Hermes thought that magic was more fun than swordsmanship because of its flexibility. Then the scene showed evening approaching, and Fran called out from behind that it was getting dark. Hermes reacted while sitting and thought that the day's practice had finally come to an end when Fran came to check up on him and forced him to stop. Then the scene shifted, and Hermes was thinking that with around a month remaining until he enrolled in the Royal First Magic Academy High School, he devoted himself to training his swordsmanship and magic. Hermes was shown fighting his father with a sword while thinking that he spent mornings under his father's swordsmanship instruction and his afternoons dedicated to studying magic. Then the scene shifted again, and Hermes used magic while thinking that thanks to that training, in just 2 weeks, other than dark, he had mastered using the other 5 magic attributes. He thought that his mana consumption was low and its activation was limited to the palm of his hand, but even so, his progress was remarkably fast according to his father. A few days later, Hermes was training with a sword while thinking that he had finally gained a bare minimum of combat ability. After training, Hermes thought that in just 1 more week, the Magic Academy's entrance ceremony would take place. While wiping his sweat, he said that it was getting to be about that time and thought that once that happened, the game's main plot would finally begin. Considering the possibility of getting caught up in some incident in the future, he thought that he would like to head to a dungeon and level up. Then Hermes was shown fighting with his father again while thinking that he would not be able to move around freely once his dorm life started, so this was his only chance. Hermes concluded that it was decided. He would keep it a secret from his father and sneak out of the house. Then the scene shifted, and Hermes said that it was all right and that this should do as he finished dressing. Hermes was thinking that he had borrowed a sword from the knights his father employed. He said that it was not bad and noted that the rest went into his inventory. After pressing yes on the system, he said that with that, he was ready to head to the dungeon. The scene shifted to 2 weeks ago. Hermes had said that since he could use the status window, it would be nice if he could use an inventory. A system window appeared, and Hermes was shocked, thinking that he ended up being able to use it when he muttered that. He thought he was not sure how big it was, but everything in his room fit inside it without an issue. He noticed that even the tea he kept in the inventory had stayed hot for a few days, meaning time did not pass within it. He thought that the time suspension would come in handy someday. He also realized that no one but him could interact with the inventory. Hermes had asked whether it was really doing nothing. Fran asked what was the matter and whether it could be his head again. Hermes thought that he had tried firing magic into the inventory, but it passed right through, and it did not seem to have the ability to store magic. He thought that in case he could not make it back for some reason, he had stored a month's worth of food in his inventory. Fran had been saying that the pantry was running low again, and Hermes, standing behind a wall, said, "Whoops," and thought about the food he had stored. Back in the present, Hermes looked at the clock and said that it was time. He thought that there would not be any servants on the grounds at that moment. He opened the window and said that it was time to go. He jumped outside while thinking that he was going to an intermediate dungeon around the capital, the Halls of Lament. The scene showed the mountains, and Hermes said that it was a few minutes by foot from the capital's western gate. He stood near a cave and said he was glad it was in the same place as it was in the game. He walked toward the cave, saying it had been a while since he had been there, and thought that dungeon entrances were pretty much always caves, though beyond that, each had its own form and shape. He thought that within that intermediate dungeon, the Halls of Lament, it became a gigantic Japanese-style mansion. Hermes said it was quite horrific seeing it for real. While shaking, he said that he was not good with horror stuff, but that it was fine and he could manage it. Then, with an excited expression, he told himself he could do it, as it was a dungeon in another world and he could deal with anything with his sword and magic. He insisted to himself that he definitely could. While sneaking inside, he quietly apologized for entering. He saw some lights and hid behind a wall, thinking that the dungeon's interior had been expanded with that other world's magic, giving it a bizarrely complex structure. He said that he had information from his previous life, so he would not get lost. While sneaking, he said he knew where the monsters were, so he would not face pointless battles. He thought that the area he wanted was just up ahead and told himself to stay quiet. Then the scene showed skeletons holding swords, and Hermes thought that they were skeletons. He thought that among undead monsters, skeletons were relatively weak, but he was at level 1, so if he faced them head-on, there was no guarantee he would survive. However, he thought that there were things he could only do there. He watched the timing and entered while thinking that the enemies moved in patterns that did not overlap, so there were certain routes to remain undiscovered. Hermes attacked from behind and told the skeleton to take that. He ran while saying to make sure to chase him. He walked up the stairs, saying that the place was the same as in the game. Laughing, he said that the stun lock was set up. He thought that, for undead monsters, the holy and fire attributes were most effective, and that against skeletons, holy should work a bit better. He thought that skeletons resisted striking less than piercing and less than slashing, and that adding in rotation to decrease the energy and increase the power would help. He guessed that imagining something like a bullet would do. Hermes used magic and threw it at the skeletons, hitting them. He said that part of the issue was that his magic proficiency was lacking, but it simply did not have enough power. He thought that according to his information from the game, at his starting stats, he would need 5 shots from holy magic to take out a skeleton. Hermes used the magic again, said alright, laughed, and said he would have the skeletons accompany his experimentation and leveling for a while. He thought about his MP's natural recovery. He used the magic from his hand again, hitting the skeletons, then again, and again while laughing wildly as he spammed the attacks. After defeating them all, he said, "Alright," and smiled, saying his level had gone up a good bit. He looked at his watch and said, "Oops," and that if he did not start heading home, they would be in an uproar. He said that the world was brimming with danger. While walking outside, he said that his father could not complain about him getting stronger. He walked up the stairs and exited the cave, saying that he still needed an excuse to slip out of the house. He thought that he had actually gotten used to the horror ambience before he knew it. He walked away, and the scene shifted. Hermes was thinking that for the next few days, while coming up with various excuses, he continued going to the dungeon and researching magic at home. He thought that he had kept up a fulfilling daily routine since his reincarnation. Then he thought that the day of the ceremony had finally come. He said that the story of Love Sorcerer began starting that day. He thought that he did not want to get wrapped up in the events, so he was going to stay away from Love Sorcerer's main character. He thought that other than that, he could not wait to meet his favorite character, Minerva, and that he was very excited. He thought that the main heroine, Minerva, seemed like a typical tsundere, and that when following her personal route, meaning when raising her affection, she turned into a character who became unbelievably lovey-dovey. He thought that the gap was irresistible. He thought that he was just a mob character, so he had no intention of making a move on the heroines, though it would be nice to at least chat with her. He walked outside the room, thinking that he was well aware he was not destined to be with them, but he was happy to get the chance to see the girls he once fell in love with and glad he could support their romantic paths. With a proud expression, he thought that it was time to play the role of Hermes again that day and that the game should begin. Then the scene showed 3 girls. Then the scene shifted, and a royal carriage was shown while Hermes was thinking that after spring arrived, in April, the entrance ceremony of the Royal First Magic Academy would occur. He thought that this was the beginning of the main story of the romantic action RPG Lovely Sorcerer. Hermes was sitting in the carriage thinking that he, Hermes von Lunacelia, was just a mob character who turned 15 that year and would attend that entrance ceremony. He thought that being enrolled alongside the game's main characters made it hard not to feel the blatant hand of fate. Hermes commented that the carriage was no faster than walking. Fran responded that his safety came first. Hermes thought that as a fan, it made him happy to be involved in the story. He thought that up until middle school, Hermes had kept his abilities hidden and led a quiet life, but even his family expected that he would stand out now. He decided that he would master both swordsmanship and magic and become unparalleled, thinking that a peaceful life was no longer possible. He thought that everything would be for a single purpose, to enjoy that world to the fullest, and everything else he could not care less about. Fran announced that they could see the school building. Hermes thought with excitement that over there was the place of his dreams. A building was shown, and Hermes, now standing near it, said that this was the Royal First Magic Academy. He thought that he would live in the dorms for the next 3 years. Hermes said he would be heading to the ceremony and, knowing it was a lot to carry, told Fran he was counting on her. Fran told him to leave it to her and to take care of himself. Hermes smiled and told her the same, saying that if she were to be injured, he would be too worried to sleep. Fran, blushing, told him not to jest and ran away while announcing she would be off. Hermes commented on how quickly she left. Hermes walked inside, thinking that the first thing he needed to do was find which class he was in. He thought his heart was racing. A crowd of people was shown, and Hermes thought aloud that there were so many people and that he could not see the class list and asked others to move out of the way. Then he saw a girl with curly hair, and upon noticing her, Hermes reacted with surprise. She saw him and, with recognition, asked if it was Hermes-sama. Hermes smiled and mentally reacted to her appearance, thinking that his beloved main heroine had popped up right before him. He thought that her name was Minerva von Sunlight, the main heroine of Lovely Sorcerer, and like him, she was from a ducal house. He thought that the Sunlight ducal house had served as close aides to the royals for generations and held the position of judicial officers tasked with upholding law and order. Hermes thought that for that reason, they were known to have the greatest impartiality and sense of justice. Hermes nervously greeted her, blushing, commenting on what a coincidence it was that they met there, while thinking that he could not stop stuttering. Minerva told him that since they were both new students, it was only natural for them to run into each other at the academy. Hermes thought that, of course, it was natural. Minerva then added that calling it a coincidence was still not entirely wrong. Hermes asked what she meant, and Minerva informed him that he had not yet checked his class. She offered to enlighten him, and told him that he was in class 1, like her. Hermes was shocked and wondered how that could be. He thought that being in the same class as Minerva, the main heroine, naturally meant he would be classmates with the other heroines and the main character too, since all the main characters in Love Soar were from the same class. Minerva told him she was surprised to be in the same class as him as well, but glad. Hermes repeated her words in surprise, asking if she was glad. Minerva explained that Hermes had caught her eye for a while, because he was the first person ever to have an aptitude for all magic attributes, which was enough to make anyone curious. Hermes thought that since their houses were of the same noble rank, she had greeted Hermes many times before. Hermes, with a tense expression, said that he was not the only one anymore, and mentioned that there was a scholarship student that year who had the same aptitudes as him. Hermes thought that that guy was Love Soar's main character, Atlas Kun. Minerva said that she had heard that and confirmed that he was a commoner. But then, with a slightly frightening intensity, she said that if they both had the same talents, she was more interested in Hermes. Hermes wondered what she meant as she continued, saying that someone with the blood of the ever-promising Lunicelia ducal house had amazing abilities, and she could not hold back her curiosity. Hermes wondered if Minerva had always been that type of character. He thought she had seemed pointed and severe in the game and wondered whether it was because he was an acquaintance and not the main character, or perhaps because his charm was maxed out. Suddenly, a girl crashed into Hermes, and he caught her, stopping her from falling. He asked if she was injured. Hermes was stunned and thought that she was absurdly cute and wondered whether the game had a character like her. The girl blushed and insisted she was fine. Hermes told her that she did not seem fine to him at all and placed his hand on her shoulder, saying he could use holy magic to treat light wounds. She blushed harder and looked away. Hermes thought that upon closer inspection, he might somehow know her. Their faces were close when Minerva intervened, telling Hermes to stop because he seemed to be troubling Artemis San. Hermes recognized the name, and it clicked for him that she was Artemis von Asta. He said aloud that she was the daughter of the famed adventurer household, the Asta ducal house. Hermes thought that her father and his father had been schoolmates, so they were acquainted, but that her character's name had never appeared in the game. Minerva commented that Hermes could not have possibly forgotten Artemis and questioned him sharply. Hermes apologized to Lady Artemis, explaining that he did not intend to trouble her and only wanted to ensure she was not injured. Artemis reacted in embarrassment and surprise. Hermes told her to feel free to tell him if anything hurt since they were close and she did not need to hold back. Artemis insisted she was all right, and blushing wildly, said that she had been the one who bumped into him so rudely and that if anything, at least one of her fingers should have been broken. Hermes thought she was scary, insisting he had been careless too and that she did not need to say something so extreme. Artemis said she was glad. Hermes held her hand and said she was not injured. Minerva then exclaimed in frustration, asking if she was an insect. Artemis, overwhelmed, ran away while yelling. Hermes noted that she was gone. Minerva agreed and then, flustered, called out to Hermes, saying that given the rare opportunity Hermes interrupted her and attempted to leave, thanking her for letting him know what class he was in. As he turned, Minerva grabbed him, insisting that there was still a fragile maiden there, blushing as she said it. Hermes wondered who she meant, thinking sarcastically of the versatile lady who could use both swords and magic and always ranked at the top of her class. Minerva called out to him again, and Hermes corrected himself, saying that of course she was a beautiful yet fragile maiden. Minerva thanked him, and then asked where he intended to run off to when such a beautiful maiden was still there. She questioned whether he would leave behind a girl from his same class. Hermes said he had been going to their class. Minerva repeated his words in disbelief. Hermes, frightened, quickly corrected himself and said he would of course be going with Lady Minerva. Minerva responded, flustered but pleased, saying that if he insisted, she would tag along and asked whether she could bother him for some companionable conversation. Hermes said it would be his pleasure.
By the way, if you enjoyed the video, maybe consider liking and subscribing, pretty please?